Good morning.
Morning, Sylvia.
What is my hair doing today? It is frightening. All right.
I've been having problems with my audio on Zoom. If I use the space bar to do temporary, all of a sudden it shuts me off and I can't get back on again. So I'm trying to figure it out, but we'll talk to you later.
Well, okay, good, fine, good. Morning, Adam.
Morning.
How are you?
Not bad. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I was up too late watching the festivities from the Capitol.
Yep.
Well, and it was very interesting. It was all over the place, but they had a great concert.
Nice.
2-second one is everybody has a great sense of relief.
Well, some people, other people are concerned, I'm sure, depending on what side of the aisle you are. But I thought it was a great presentation, and I like the virtual. I realized this morning that, maybe there weren't as many hangovers. Usually there's so many balls and parties, and because of COVID, I don't think there was anything like that. So they can get right to work like the rest of us.
It's all downhill from here.
All right, there's Beverly. Hi, Beverly. I thought I heard you were coming late today.
I had to do a follow-up doctor's appointment. They made it for 8:30, so I was biting my nails, but I got here.
Good. So it wasn't a virtual thing. It was an actual appointment, huh?
Yeah,
They still happen.
they do. How are you?
Hey, everybody.
I'm pretty good. Oh, there's Colleen.
Awesome.
And Nancy. Morning, Colleen. Morning, Bruce and George and Nancy.
Morning.
Good morning, Sylvia.
Was that George? That was my friend George.
That was me, Sylvia. Hey, Sylvia, they finally gave me a camera and a microphone on my actual computer. So this is my first Zoom meeting on not having to go off in a conference room somewhere.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can't see you though, George. You got to click
I know,
on that camera.
I know. I gotta get the video going too. Hold on. This is the first here.
Yeah, we got to see your mug.
Oh no. Well, it's a little
There
dark.
you go.
Hold on, I'm gonna turn the other light on.
All right, progress. Wow.
Yeah, Liz and I both got one, so we don't have to go in conference rooms anymore, which is okay, but it's nice to be able to sit at your desk. So
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, I'm at my desk because Nate has a presentation and we want him to have his spot in the conference room.
Yep.
And yeah, there's Dean. Plus I have to cut out a bit early because I'm double booked. And there's Tim White and Mark Sunin. Good morning. Here comes James. There, oh, there's our friend Nate. Here's Monique. Morning, Tim. That looks like nice. Your shirt matches your paint on your wall.
No
You're very
kidding. I never even realized that.
You're color coordinated. You have very earthy tones today. So
I'm more-
nice that you thought of these things. I'm sure you did.
I'm more coordinated than I ever would have dreamed. Thank you for noticing. And good morning.
All right, I've got to turn up my speaker so I can hear everyone. Let's see. Hi, Dean. Saw that you popped in.
Hey, Sylvia.
Morning, and we have more staff coming in. There's Cam and good morning, Monique. And Mark Sunin, good morning. Are you in New Boston?
Yes, yes, I'm in my home office.
Nice. And there's our friend Carl and Zach. Huh. Oh, there he is. Yep. All right. Nate, is anyone else in the room with you, just so we know?
Nope, I'm living in luxury here by myself with a big spacious conference room.
Well, yeah, luxurious.
It is.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lucy. How are you today?
I'm well. I was having a little trouble getting in, but because I forgot to type one of the ones in the middle number, there was 3111. It should have been 4. So I'm like, gosh, why can't I get in? So that was easy after I looked at it a little closer.
Well, good, good. I hate those hiccups. I start to panic too easily. What am I doing wrong? Oh,
Yeah, I wrote
God.
it down. I'm thinking, oh, there's got to be another number. So I had to go look it up. So that was easy to fix, but yep.
We're glad you're here. And we've got Becky Hebert. It is nice to see you, Becky.
Hey, Becky.
Hi, good to see you too.
Yeah.
Wow, your hair is so long. Have you had it cut?
Only once.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the way my spouse, she's now got this giant, like, thing bun.
I'm definitely overdue for a haircut. Yeah.
Well,
Well, it's good to see everybody.
Yeah.
I get a lot of comments on my hair too. People love it.
I'm sure you do, Nate. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Up, and there's our friend Fred and Todd. Good to see everybody.
Good morning, Sylvia.
Good morning.
Speaking of haircuts, Fred. Like,
Yeah, no, it's just pulled back strategically for Zoom meeting.
okay, all right.
Yeah, Fred, you haven't cut your hair either, have you?
Not since last February.
Wow. What? Let's see the ponytail.
Let's see the side.
No.
Yeah.
Fred,
Come
Fred, do you have
on.
a- Fred,
No,
do you have a
no,
ponytail?
no.
Do you have a
No.
ponytail, Fred?
That would relinquish my conservative roots. So
Well, on one Zoom session, I was showcasing how I cut my own hair, which you can see is obviously frightening. And when I did make an appointment, my spouse, who's very nervous about COVID, said, nope, you're not getting your hair cut. So one morning at 5 a.m, I took my scissors that I usually prune our poodle, and I just sort of did this away around my head. And when I came down the stairs, her immediate reaction was, oh God.
Did she send you to the hairdresser?
So yeah, no, she has not sent me to the hairdresser. She just has said I'm no longer allowed to have scissors. Well, you know, it's all fun. It grows, thank God.
Yes.
Well, I think we definitely have a quorum here. So Colleen, if you want to start us off.
Sure. You want me to read this little spiel here into the record?
Yes, I do.
All right. So I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And I'll start by saying that the chair of the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission has found that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order 12 pursuant to executive order 2020-04, the SNHPC and committees thereof are authorized to meet electronically. Please note there's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. SNHPC is utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform. The public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting as follows. Online access being through the Zoom website meeting link. Telephone only access is dial 646-558-8656. Enter meeting ID 859-1111-3162. These instructions have also been provided on the SNHPC website, www.snhpc.org. So if anyone has a problem accessing the meeting, please call 603-669-4664 or email mduchesne@snhpc.org. In the event that the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. So I guess we'll begin with a roll call of attendance. Sylvia, if you can help out with that with your list.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to do that and the minutes simultaneously?
That sounds great.
All right, so we will first need a motion to accept the minutes.
Colleen, Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of December 17th, 2020.
Okay, so I have a motion from George. Can I have a second?
I'll
Candy,
second.
That's Fred.
Okay.
Gilbert. All right, so I'll go around the horn, and if I miss anyone, I'll check in at the end. Okay, from Bedford, we have Rebecca Hebert.
I am present and alone in the room. Is that what we need to say?
And also about the minutes.
Oh, about the minutes. I was not at the last meeting, so I'll abstain.
Thank you, Becky.
Yep.
We have Dick Snow from Candia.
I am present and I vote aye.
All right, thank you. Derry, we have George Sioris.
Present, I say yes on the minutes.
Francistown, we have Linda Kuhnhart.
Present, favor, minutes.
Thanks, Linda. Hooksett, we have Bruce Thomas.
Here and I.
Thanks, Bruce. Londonderry, Colleen, hello.
I'm present and I'll be abstaining from the minutes.
Fine. From Manchester, we have Todd Connors.
Also present, but I didn't attend the last meeting, so I abstain as well.
All right, good. New Boston, we have Mark Sunan.
Present and aye.
And I'm thinking that's it from communities. Have I missed anyone from communities? No. Okay, good. I'll continue. We have Fred Roberge from Easter Seals.
Present and aye.
And we have Lori McCarowitz from CART. Lori, you are muted.
Present, and I abstain. I was not at the last meeting.
Thank you. Lucy, I think you're our representative from DOT this time.
Yes, I am. I say yes, and I'm the only person in the room. Yes.
Okay, great. Nancy Michaels, our chamber representative.
Aye and yes on the minutes.
Thanks, Nancy. Tim White from DES.
Present and yes to the minutes.
Thanks, Tim. And I'm a voting member and I will say yes. All right, so we can move to our first item.
So it looks like Bev Donovan, you're up first.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me today to talk about our dairy parklets. That was a fun collaboration that we got to undertake thanks to James and Maddie from Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission and a grant through AARP, which enabled us to just kind of try out what parklets would do in dairy. And it turns out they were pretty successful. So back in May of 2019, James and Maddie worked with us in one of our local businesses downtown, The Grind Rail Trail Cafe, if any of you have been here and seen that. It's a great little spot. It sits right in the heart of downtown, very close to where our rail trail crosses Broadway. So it's a very busy spot. We've seen a big uptick in pedestrian and bicycle traffic and folks using the trail. And business has grown downtown because of the rail trail. So we thought, that's a perfect spot to try out a parklet. Melanie Davis, who owns The Grind, is a big proponent of complete streets, and some folks downtown have been pushing for complete streets for a long time. There's challenges to doing that downtown. So we're not sure that we could ever implement an entire complete streets layout, but there are definitely opportunities for components of that or similar aspirations. And parklets is one of them. So on that May day, we had the folks from Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission come down and set up and bring pieces that we would need. So ropes and cones and using the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission truck as a barrier. The owner of the cafe brought in furniture and worked with a local farm and garden center to bring in plants and trees and really made it look kind of fun. So I'm gonna throw up a picture if I can share my screen and not mess things up here, then I will do that.
I have to make you co-host to do that.
I'd have to.
There you go. Now you
Right,
can.
let's try. Oh, it says disabled. There we go.
Try now. I just did it.
All right. So I'm gonna skip down here to this slide. Oops. Sorry, that's me. So you can see the folks from Southern New Hampshire brought in those black little skinny bollard type things there and the roping. They brought in the green grass carpeting that you see there. And Melanie put together a couple of different seating arrangements. And then also on the west end, you can see there's some games, there's some cornhole and whatnot. So we did this in conjunction with Downtown Dairy Derby Day. And what that is, just a little downtown celebration that combines the Kentucky Derby with the same day as Dairy's Fishing Derby. It also happens to be Alan Shepard Day. So kind of a cool mishmash of stuff going on downtown. And this all occurred on that day. And we were able to have some folks doing some pedestrian counts that day. We had people interviewing some of the people that were in the parklets or walking by just to get their feedback from it. So we could have a really good bit of community engagement going forward. So from there, we decided we would go and talk to the Dairy Town Council and find out what the appetite was for us trying to do a little bit stepped up version for the following year. And as it worked out, 2020, we really did kind of need it. So it involved a lot of education. Our police chief, our fire chief, our DPW director, were all a bit skeptical. They hadn't seen parklets themselves. They hadn't experienced them. It was all a brand new concept. We really had to talk an awful lot about how they work, and so that's what we did. We talked about them being removable. We talked about them being something that would facilitate the neighborhood life and create some more vibrancy in the downtown, and provide opportunities for our businesses to expand a little and be able to be a little bit more successful. We also had to create guidelines. We looked to other towns, other cities across the country that have done this. We looked at, of course, the national standards, and they're available for anybody to look at if you Google it. And then we had to figure out, based on the street itself, Broadway, and where could these fit realistically? How could we do this? Would we be able to do them in front of the businesses that we would hope would make use of them? And then one of the really major concerns from police, fire, and DPW was that the speed limit downtown is actually 30 miles an hour. And if you've been on Broadway, you know that's pretty wide road. Those lanes are very wide, and people tend to go much faster than 30 miles an hour. The recommended speed through a downtown would be 25 miles per hour, but that is not the case here. So, that was something that was alarming to all three of those departments. And, you know, they sort of took a leap of faith and allowed us to go forward and try this anyway. And it turned out that it actually did slow the flow of traffic, because people are aware that there's something in the street and that there are people in the street. And I think that was a good thing.
Just to let you know, you're not in presentation mode. We can see, I think what's on maybe your screen, which is design ideas and all that. So I think slideshow.
Let's see.
And from current slide. One over from current slide. Yes.
All right. Well, that's much better.
Oh, maybe. Okay. So now it's in a, mode where we still see your next slide. So it's not still in presentation mode.
All right.
I mean, it was almost better the other way.
I don't know how to fix that. I'm sorry.
You should probably unshare your screen and then reshare specifically the slideshow screen.
All right. Sorry about that.
You know, details. We've all been through this, so.
I think I'm back in the same spot.
Hey, you're great. Now it's perfect.
Okay. All right. So anyway, like I said, we had to go through and come up with a set of standards. We walked the streets with our DPW director to really take a look at every potential spot where we could have parklets. So we identified 4 or 5 that had potential. We had to come up with an application process. We had to come up with a review process. We had to have public hearings and get community support. And in the end, we were able to, because of COVID, we were able to, even though we didn't have the right things in place because of COVID, we were able to create an emergency application process where, and this is the same spot where the temporary parklet was last spring, summer, and fall. We were able to do this, which was a temporary version of a permanent parklet in front of the grind. Since that time, Derry has approved, the town council has approved the design guidelines and the ordinance, and now we'll be able to implement parklets this coming April. in a permanent seasonal basis, which will have to adhere to different standards than you see here in the emergency situation. But in all, what we've found is working with Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, definitely doing the pop-up parklet was a huge factor in allowing us to get this to become a permanent ordinance. We would not have been able to do this if we weren't able to show really what this was and gotten buy-in and a comfort level from our police, fire, and DPW. So, so that's about it. If anybody has any questions, happy to answer.
Colleen, sorry, Beverly, I'm curious. Well, thank you for the shameless plugs. If anybody has if anybody has interest in those materials that you saw in those photos, we have those in the basement, and we can either work with communities to deploy that, or we can lend them out to communities anywhere. So if you have an interest, feel free to get a hold of us, and we can work out a design with you to implement over the nice months. But Beverly, I'm curious, how was the process of working with the elected officials to review and approve this? Did you find that they were open to this? Did you have to put together some special language for approval?
Yes, I want to make sure I give a shout out to Liz Robidoux, our planning assistant, because Liz was instrumental in this. Liz, of course, has all kinds of experience in writing up these ordinances and putting them into the right framework to go forward to the town council. So yeah, I mean, two things happened. One, we did the pop-up, which was the first piece, and that was just like, hey, this is what this is. And nobody knew what parklets were. I mean, very few people were in the know about that. So just number one, seeing it. And the day that we did that on Downtown Derby Day, most of the counselors were downtown anyway, wandering around and just sort of participating in the event and getting to experience it. So that was huge, just having them physically there to experience the pop-up. Last year during COVID, I think that people were just naturally much more open-minded and trying to make sure that we could assist our businesses to stay in business and stay healthy. So in some ways, you know, COVID was on our side in this situation, in that it really did force us to, as a community, to think outside the box and accept new ideas that maybe would not have been accepted otherwise. So, you know, if there's silver linings to be had, that was one of them on behalf of our businesses. So, you know, those two things really were it.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Beverly. And as James said, if any of the communities are interested in a pilot program, even if it's one day, we can help coordinate that. And the tools that we got, the bollards and the green grass, those sorts of things, cones, we've got all that from AARP, luckily, in a small grant. I see that, Becky, you've got your hand raised.
I do. I had a quick question about the parklets and your permitting in Derry for outdoor dining. Did you try to marry those two during COVID last year? Because it just seems like such a terrific idea. I'd love to hear about how you worked through the permitting process for outdoor dining. Did you kind of create a hybrid, or were you encouraging restaurants to shift to the parklet model where it made sense?
We did. We really were, we acted quickly, and the town council acted quickly. And it's lucky for us, we have a town council form of government that we do, because they could make those decisions, which otherwise might have, if you're in a town, for example, you might have to go to town meeting or your annual voting. We were able to be very responsive. And again, the town council, we were very lucky, they were very open-minded, and our total focus was on making sure the restaurants were successful and we could do whatever we could do to get them through COVID-19. So yes, we actually were able, we had it on our radar anyway to be working on these things. This just really accelerated it. So we did change our outdoor dining. Folks can now, you know, apply for a yearly outdoor dining permit. That's now a part of our ordinance. And the same with outdoor dining. We came up with new standards to allow sidewalk dining where it was able to be accommodated. You know, you have to meet all the ADA and everything else. And then again, with the parklets, really, and this is because the DPW director took the time to actually physically walk the streets with us and measure things and look at things and figure out, could this work? We were able to make that happen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Most of our outdoor dining in Bedford looked like big event tents, you know, just to keep
we
the
have that
elements.
too.
And, you know, we've got, but this is such a neat idea, especially with COVID. It just seemed really timely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Colleen, I think we're ready for our next item.
All right, and Nate, it looks like you're up with the Metropolitan Transportation Plan.
I'm actually going to defer to Carl on this agenda item. I think we're just interested really in hearing if there are any comments on the draft plan as we head towards closing out our comment period. So I'll yield to Carl.
And just for the record, so like I mentioned earlier, I have a 10:30 Zoom, so I'll leave it to Nate to take over the role of if there's any vote and I think there's one vote that's needed. But anyway, so at 10:30, you will not see me.
Good morning, everyone. Sylvia, I need control
Right.
to be able to share my screen. I don't know if you're controlling that.
I am. All right, you are now a co-host.
All right, bear with me, everyone. Good morning. Here it is. Oh, come on. There we go. Can everybody see that now?
Yes, you're all set.
Okay. Hi, Carl Epic. I'm Principal Transportation Planner here at the Commission. And this is really a very brief presentation. It's not really even a presentation. Just for you to recall that the MTP was completed and published in draft form on Christmas Eve almost, on the 23rd of December. And the period runs through today, I believe. This is our guiding document for adopted policies, goals, and project proposals. This says through 2040, but I think it's through 2045. That might just be a typo. And as I mentioned, we released it on the 23rd. And I wake up this morning, check my email at 7 a.m. or so, and surprise, there's the only public comments we've received at about 12:40 this morning, which included 3 general comments and 13 project comments. And they're good comments. They're mostly related to bicycle and pedestrian aspects of the plan. But obviously we haven't had a chance to address those. So we're really just looking today for any additional comments you may have. Hopefully you've taken a perusal through the 100+ page document. If not, at least the project section in the rear and in the last chapters. And ultimately, Nate, correct me if I'm wrong here, we're looking for a recommendation after comment discussion to go to the policy committee next Tuesday.
Yeah, if people have any comments, now would be the time to share them so we can make sure that they're considered. Our MPO will be having a public hearing next Tuesday to consider adoption of the plan. The comments that came in early this morning that Carl referenced are from our former colleague, longtime New Hampshire DOT project manager, Alex Vogt, who lives in Bedford and has become, in his retirement, a very strong bicycle and pedestrian advocate. And he had some scoping level comments on a few different bicycle pedestrian projects that are identified in the plan. So we're going to sort through those and address those and prepare some recommended responses for our MPO meeting on Tuesday. But if anybody has any comments from the TAC perspective or from your individual perspective, now would be the time to share those. Otherwise, we certainly would welcome a recommendation that the MPO favorably consider adopting the plan at their Tuesday hearing.
So Nate and Carl, this is Mark Student from New Boston. I am still working on comments. I've got 10, but I've only made it to page 30.
Okay.
All right.
Mark, feel free to send those along to us, via email when you get through, and we can make sure that we address those.
Got it.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman. Nope. Madam Chairman, Colleen, if there aren't any other comments, not to rush this, but I'll make a motion to recommend that the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission MPO adopt the fiscal year 2021-2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan as presented by staff.
Thanks, George. Anyone, could I have a second for the motion?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Becky. Any other comments or discussion before we vote? Okay, Sylvia, I think we need to vote by roll call. So if you don't mind going through.
Don't mind at all. Becky in Bedford.
Aye.
Dick in Candia.
Candia, Dick Snow, yes, I guess I gotta recommend it as a part of the system.
Okay. George Sioris in Derry.
Yes, from Derry.
Linda in Francistown.
Yes.
Bruce Thomas in Hooksett.
Yes.
Colleen in Londonderry.
Yes.
Todd in Manchester.
Yes.
And Mark Sunan in New Boston.
So it's going to be a nay from me until I see how the comments are addressed.
And then Fred in Easter Seals.
Yes.
Lori at Cart.
Yes.
Thanks, Lori. Lucy at DOT.
I'm abstaining.
Thanks, Lucy. Nancy Michaels.
Yes.
Thanks, Nancy. Tim at DES.
Yes.
And then I vote to abstain today. All right. I think that's it, Colleen. I think we're ready for our last item then.
All right, thank you. I guess we'll move on then to the transportation improvement program. So Nate, is this one you or are you mixing it up on me?
This one's me, yeah.
Thanks.
I wanted to defer to Carl because he'll be hearing enough from me today, and an overdose of me is too much. So I'm gonna try to share my screen, and we'll see if this works.
There we go.
Are we in presentation mode?
Yes.
Full screen slide? Okay, great. So we're going to walk through the draft fiscal year 2021 to 2024 transportation improvement program. And I show this slide every time we talk about the TIP or the long range plan, just to show how these different pieces fit together. So we just talked about our long range plan, our regional plan, or what we call the metropolitan transportation plan. That looks out at that 20+ year horizon. So that's the fiscal 21 to 2045 plan. That feeds into the projects that are identified in that plan, then feed into our state level 10-year transportation improvement plan. And then we have a federal requirement called our TIP, or our Transportation Improvement Program, that is a 4-year requirement at the federal level. But in reality, it's just a very detailed look at the first 4 years of the 10-year plan. So that's kind of how we go from concept to construction. And you're probably all experts in this at this point, but I always show this slide just as a refresher. So the tip that we're going to be talking about today is our current TIP is fiscal 19 to 22. We update that every 2 years. So now we're looking at fiscal 2021 to 2024. So all of the projects that we talk about today have really advanced pretty far through the process and are heading quickly towards construction imminently. So as I mentioned, we have been coordinating with our colleagues at New Hampshire DOT on this TIP update. We will be releasing the draft TIP tomorrow, January 22nd. We're going to hold a 30-day public comment period. This will not be your only opportunity to hear or provide comments on the TIP. Today is basically kind of the sneak preview, but a pretty detailed sneak preview. You're going to see everything that's in the draft TIP today. But we will have an opportunity as a TAC to provide comments and feedback at the February 18th meeting. And then our MPO will hold a public hearing to consider adoption on February 23rd. So what's in the TIP for the region? Let's kind of take a journey along through the projects that are in the TIP for this fiscal 21 to 24 period. The first one is Bedford Project 13692C. This is the bridge for Route 101 over Pulpit Brook. It's been in the works for some time. Total funding in the TIP, just over $5.5 million to address this bridge. And it's scheduled for construction in 2021. And this is basically, no significant change at all. This project has been moving towards construction in 2021 for a number of years now, and there has not been any delay or anything along those lines. This is basically progressing as we would expect. Bedford 40664. So this is the US Route 3 widening from Hawthorne Drive to the Manchester Airport Access Road. So in this fiscal 21 to 24 period of time, there's a total of $2.12 million of funding. That's mostly, in fact, it's mostly PE phase work, although there is some right-of-way work in there in fiscal 23 in the TIP. We know that this is a much larger project. We know that this project is going to be in the $19 to $20 million range when it goes to construction in total. But the construction schedule starts in 2026, which is beyond our TIP horizon. So when we're looking at 21 to 24, there's just $2.1 million in there, mostly for PE and right-of-way phase work. And that PE phase work, that engineering phase work, is now scheduled to begin on the project in 2021. So some initial engineering work will be happening this year. Bedford Merrimack 16100. This is a turnpike project. It says that it's improvements to the Bedford Mainline Toll Plaza on the F.E. Everett Turnpike to institute open road or all electronic tolling. In reality, it looks like this is moving towards an all electronic tolling concept. So this project, even though there is $4 million of construction funding scheduled in 2021, we expect that this project will ultimately be amended at some point in the future to delay construction to 2023 and 2024 to allow the department further time to develop that all electronic tolling concept. So right now it's programmed for construction at a $4 million level in 2021, but we fully anticipate in the next few months that will be delayed to 2023-24. Bow project number 29641. Now, Bow is not in the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission region. It's not one of our 14 member municipalities. But as some of you may recall, we have a memorandum of understanding with our colleagues in the Central New Hampshire Planning Commission, where the Manchester urbanized area, we are required to include all projects in the Manchester urbanized area as defined by the census in our TIP under federal requirements. And after the last census, we had portions of the Manchester urbanized area extending north into the towns of Allenstown, Bow, and Pembroke. So as a result, one project in the town of Bow does take place partially within the Manchester urbanized area. So we carry it in our transportation improvement program for that region, for that reason. And that is the Route 3A corridor safety improvement project. Total TIP funding, 3.7 million, construction in 2022, and that has no significant change either from the previous TIP. It is heading towards construction as we have expected. There is, the DOT does have a project website for this particular project that if you're interested in learning more about what specific improvements are envisioned as part of this project, you can find that information right from the DOT website. I am not necessarily an expert in the scope of this project. We carry it in our TIP because it affects the Manchester urbanized area. Candia Project 41592. This is the Four Corners Improvement Project, technically called Safety and Operational Improvements on Route 27, 43, and Raymond Road. This is a project that we added into the 10-year plan a couple of cycles ago. It's now appearing in the TIP for the first time because there is now some engineering phase funding, a small amount of engineering phase funding that's been programmed in 2022. So about 174,000 in PE phase funding for this project in our TIP years. Construction of this is not anticipated until 2028. So the majority of this project and the costs related to this project are still beyond the TIP horizon, but it's appearing in our TIP for the first time because of that engineering phase work that's scheduled to start in 22. Deerfield, the bridge replacement on Route 107 over Freese's Pond. No significant change to this project either. The total funding in the TIP is just over $1 million. Construction still scheduled for 2022. No significant change here. Construction has been scheduled on that timeline at about this cost for a number of years now. So no surprises here with this project in Deerfield. Derry Londonderry, this is the Exit 4A project. And a lot has been happening if you've been reading the news over the last couple of months with the Exit 4A project. Total funding in the TIP, there are now 2 projects for Exit 4A. It used to be just the 13065 project. This TIP introduces a new project called 13065A, which is where most of the construction funding will be living now. The project is moving from a design build delivery method to a design bid build delivery method. And there have been a lot of moving parts about this project and how it's going to be delivered. I'm not going to go into that level of detail this morning with everybody, but I will make a shameless plug for our MPO meeting next Tuesday. So next Tuesday at 11:30 is our normal MPO meeting. The first item on the agenda at that MPO meeting is going to be our colleague, Bill Oldenburg. Bill Oldenburg works in the Commissioner's Office at New Hampshire DOT. He is the Assistant Director of Project Development. He is an expert on the Exit 4A project and all of the considerations that have been going into the Exit 4A project over the past few months. He will be giving a briefing to our MPO members specific to the Exit 4A project and really giving context to what's going to be shown in our draft TIP. So rather than me trying to answer questions or explain that project, I would encourage any interested members of our TAC who have a particular interest in learning more about the details of the Exit 4A project and what's been happening there to participate, at least for that section of the agenda, next Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. and hear from Bill Oldenburg directly. So I will just give that plug rather than going into detail and trying to explain all of the intricacies of this project. I think it would be better for people to hear it directly from our colleagues at DOT on next Tuesday, if you're interested and available. Hooksett Project 29611. This is the widening of Route 3 from Route 27 to Alice Avenue in the town of Hooksett. This project is undergoing PE phase work right now. In fact, I am, as well as Bruce Thomas, who's on this call, we're both members of the project advisory committee for this project, which actually met yesterday. So this project is moving forward. The total funding in the TIP years are $9.659 million, with construction in 2024 and 2025. So the 2024 construction funding obviously is within our TIP. The 2025 construction funding is beyond the tip horizon, so part of the cost of this project is partially beyond the tip horizon for that reason. But no changes of significance in this project. This project is moving forward towards construction as we expected on the timeline that we expected. Londonderry project 41593. This is the intersection of Route 28 and 128. This is a project that we'll be looking at closely, as I think everybody knows, for this 10-year plan update and the potential to add some supplemental funding to this project. It is appearing in the tip for the first time because there is a small portion of engineering phase work, $179,000, that's been scheduled for 2023. So the majority of the cost of this project and the construction of this project is beyond our tip horizon, with construction scheduled in 2027. But it will be in the tip because of that small amount of engineering work that will be happening starting in 2023. Londonderry project 41715. This is the operational and capacity improvements at Route 28 and Stonehenge Road. This is a cost sharing project, 50-50 between the town and New Hampshire DOT. Total funding is $1.64 million, with construction now scheduled in 2023. That construction timeline is a delay to 2023 in this tip. And that was agreed upon both by the town and New Hampshire DOT. My understanding is that it's to allow for right-of-way acquisition that's now needed to accommodate some MS4 stormwater control measures that will be part of the scope of the project. So that project has been delayed, I think, from 2021 to 2023 to allow that right-of-way acquisition process to happen. Londonderry 42508. This is the TAC project, the Transportation Alternatives Project, that was funded 2 years ago to construct basically the northern portion of the rail trail in the town of Londonderry. This would be a multi-use path along the side of Harvey, Webster, and Grenier Field Road. Total funding in the tip, $1.17 million, with construction scheduled in 2022. And this is an advancement of the construction timeline. The 10-year plan actually had this project proposed for construction in 2024, but there's anticipation that this project can be brought to construction sooner than that. So the proposal in the tip is 2022 construction. Manchester 16099 and 16099B. These are portions of the exit 6 and 7 reconstruction project, a very substantial project here in the city of Manchester, not far from where I'm sitting in the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission office. 16099 is the engineering and right-of-way phase work for the exit 6 and 7 project. And there are 2 breakout projects now. 16099A, which is the reconstruction of exit 6, and 16099B, which is the reconstruction of exit 7. Total funding in the tip is only $13.36 million. The project is much larger than that. But the reason that total funding in the tip is at that 13 million level is most of the funding here that's programmed in the tip is for PE and right-of-way phase work. The majority, the entirety of construction of exit 6 will happen outside of the tip period, 2025 to 2028. And the majority of construction of exit 7 will happen beyond the tip period, although a portion of exit 7 would start in 2024. So that's why project 16099B will be in our tip for that reason. So still a little ways to go, but there haven't been really any changes of significance to the project. Those construction timelines for exit 6 and 7 are the same as we have anticipated for a number of years now. So there hasn't been necessarily any slipping in the construction timeline of that project. It's just that the majority of that project is still happening outside of the tip period. Manchester 29811, this is the multi-use path, or the South Manchester, phase 2 of the South Manchester Rail Trail from Gold Street to Perimeter Road. Total funding is just over 1.5 million, construction scheduled for 2021. I believe the construction may have originally been scheduled for this project for either 2019 or 2020 and has been delayed to 2021. This is a locally managed project, and that's the current timeline to bring it to construction is 2021. So we may be seeing activity on that project, construction activity on that project this year potentially. Manchester 41414, this is the state-owned red list bridge that carries Hughes Road over I-293. Total funding in the TIP is just under $3 million. Construction schedule is 2021. This project has moved very quickly. We identified this along with the folks at the New Hampshire DOT's Bureau of Bridge Design 2 10-year plan update cycles ago. They moved quickly to work and get an on-shelf engineering done for this project, and they are moving quickly to bring this project to construction. So there really has been an emphasis on addressing these state-owned red list bridges, not just in this region, but around the state. And kudos to New Hampshire DOT for bringing this project to construction sooner than later. So that project is moving very quickly. Manchester 41594, this is our operational improvement project at the Exit 1 interchange. This was a project that we programmed in the 10-year plan, I believe 2 cycles ago. It is appearing in the TIP for the first time because there's a small amount of engineering phase work that will begin in 2024. The majority of this project will be constructed. In fact, all of construction of this project is beyond the TIP horizon. So the majority of costs are still outside of the TIP horizon, but there's a little bit of engineering phase work that's now programmed in 2024. So this project will appear in the TIP for that reason. Manchester 41747, this is the adaptive signal control project on Granite Street and the signal performance measures on South Willow Street. This is a CMAQ project that was funded in the previous CMAQ round. Total funding in actually 2 CMAQ rounds ago now. Total funding 1.3 million, construction schedule 2022, and that is the same construction schedule as in our previous TIP. So this project has been targeted for construction in 2022 since it was originally programmed, and it seems to continue to be targeted for that year with no change. Manchester 42881, this is the most recent CMAQ round. This is the intersection improvement project at South Willow Street and Weston Road. Total funding is just over $1 million with construction scheduled in 2023. This will be the first time that this project appears in our TIP because it was just selected in the most recent CMAQ solicitation back in 2019. Same thing with Manchester 42886. This is the roundabout project at the intersection of River Road and Bicentennial Drive at the Dairyfield School. Total funding is just over 1.9 million for this project. Construction scheduled for 2024. And again, this is the first time this project is appearing in our TIP because it was just selected from the 2019 CMAQ solicitation. Nashua, Merrimack, Bedford, 13761 and child projects. This is the expansion of the F.E. Everett Turnpike, which is a very large and significant project statewide. This is basically all of the 2-lane sections of the F.E. Everett Turnpike between Exit 8 and the I-293 interchange are going to be widened to 3 lanes. Total funding in the TIP, just in the TIP years, is $131 million, $131.5 million for the total project. But only but $25.8 million basically of that amount is actually occurring within our region. The majority of the project is taking place obviously within the towns of Merrimack and Nashua, but we have that one portion in the town of Bedford. Construction schedule for the entire project is 2021 to 2025. So that 2025 funding is partially beyond our TIP horizon. So you know, there's more funding to come outside of the TIP years. This project overall, the overall expansion of the F.E. Everett Turnpike has been split into 5 different components, 2 of which affect our region. So the 13761 project is primarily now engineering and right-of-way phase work, and there are an A, B, C, and D project associated with that for actual construction. The A, B, and C projects all exist within Nashua and Merrimack. So we're not carrying those in our TIP because they're not directly within our region. But the 13761D project is between exit 13 and the I-293 interchange in Bedford. So we do carry that project in our TIP. It's the only portion of construction of this project that affects directly our region. So you won't see the A, B, and C projects in our TIP, but you will see the D project for that reason. Where 41741, this is the Route 77 bridge over Canal 2 of Choke Brook. This is another instance where we have a small amount of engineering phase work that is scheduled for 2024. So this will appear for the first time in our TIP because of that small amount of 2024 engineering work. But the majority of this project will take place outside of the TIP horizon, and construction is scheduled for 2028 on this project. Wyndham 40665, this is the intersection improvement project at Route 28 and Ralston Road. Same story here, it's appearing for the first time in our TIP because there is some engineering phase work, a small amount of engineering phase work that's been programmed for 2022. But the majority of this work and the majority of costs associated with this project are beyond our TIP horizon. Construction is scheduled for this project in 2026. You will also see in our draft TIP a number less than in all of our previous TIPs for the last decade plus, but you'll still see a number of I-93 expansion projects, the Salem to Manchester projects in our TIP. There's a small amount of final design and right-of-way funding for fiscal year 2021 in project 10418X. And then we have a series of debt service projects, all of which are have funding associated with them. 14633 is the state-backed debt service for the northern projects on the I-93. That's the SB 367 state gas tax revenue that supports the debt service on 14633. All of the other debt service projects that I'll be mentioning are all federal Garvey bond debt service. So 14800B is federal debt service. 14800C related to the exit 3 reconstruction is all federal debt service. 14800F related to the mainline work in Wyndham is also federal debt service. So all of those debt service projects do appear in our TIP because that's a commitment of federal resources to pay the debt service on those projects. The Route 101 corridor study implementation projects. So there's one implementation project. It's 13692D for the 101 corridor study. This is just listed as traffic and safety improvements in Wilton, Milford, Amherst, and Bedford, consistent with the intent of the 2002 corridor study. Just over $8.1 million programmed in the TIP period. Construction scheduled for 2023. New Hampshire DOT has identified a number of potential locations for where this project could end up being constructed. I believe they are honing in on a preferred alternative that is in the town of Amherst. So I don't know that we're going to see a lot of direct improvements from this particular project in Bedford. However, they haven't made any final decisions yet, and we will see what the ultimate scope looks like. Because it potentially includes the town of Bedford within its scope, we carry it in our TIP for that reason. On the transit side of things, pretty simple now. We used to have a lot of different transit breakout projects. We now consolidate those into 3 programs. So the first program is Section 5307, Urban Area Formula Funding for Manchester Transit Authority. That's their primary operating paratransit preventative maintenance and planning funding for MTA and CART services. Most of the federal resources are allocated directly by FTA. So over the 4-year TIP period, 17.45 million in total funding programmed for 5307 activities. 11.5 million of that being federal and just under 6 million of that being local match from the city of Manchester and the affected communities in the CART service area. No significant changes here from the last TIP. Similarly, there is a Section 5310 program that's funding for seniors and individuals with disabilities. That's actually a direct allocation that CART receives. Of course, it's under the MTA umbrella now, as CART and MTA have merged. So you're seeing just a small portion of 5310 funding that comes directly from FTA for service within the CART service area communities. So total funding for 5310 activities, 621,000 of that, just under $500,000 federal and just under 125,000 in local. And no significant changes here either. No significant changes either to the third program, the FTA Section 5339. Again, this is bus and bus facilities funding. So it's capital vehicles and capital equipment for transit services in the CART service area. So total funding in the TIP, and again, this comes, the federal portion of this comes directly from FTA to CART. So 199,000 in total funding, just under 170,000 of that being federal. And then there's actually a small portion of state funding that offsets the local match requirements for bus capital facilities. It's one of the few areas in the world of public transit where there is state funding is on capital match. I'm not going to go into all of these programs, but they will all appear in our TIP. We carry all of the statewide programs that potentially benefit the region in our TIP. So those include that entire list that you see here are statewide programs. In any given year, there may be efforts within these statewide programs that directly affect our region. In any other given year, there may not be. We carry them all in our TIP as statewide programs because they all potentially benefit the region as a whole. So if you're interested in learning more about any one of these individual programs and what it may be funding, please let me know, and we will get you answers to those questions. But in the interest of time, I wanted to focus this presentation on the local and regional projects rather than the statewide programs. So that's the TIP, a draft TIP in a nutshell. I will stop sharing my screen now, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know that's a lot of information, but that's pretty much the snapshot of the federally funded transportation projects that will be happening in our region, at least for the next 4 years that we know of today.
Thanks, Nate. Does anyone have any questions?
Is everyone still awake? I know that was a lot of project information to throw at everybody, so hopefully people didn't fall asleep.
Right, well, seeing no questions, I guess the next item on the agenda, Nate, is the annual list of obligated projects.
Yep, I'm going to share my screen again. I have 85 slides on the annual list of obligated projects. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. I don't.
It's 86, isn't it?
Yes.
He was checking to see if we were still.
Not one more than 84 for sure. So this is, I'm just going to hit a few highlights here. Can everybody see this presentation? I only have a few slides here, just to hit a few highlights. Can everybody see this in presentation mode?
Yep,
okay.
you're good.
So at the end of December, we published our annual list of obligated projects for fiscal year 2020. This is a federal requirement that MPOs develop and publish a listing of projects, all projects that had federal funding obligated in the preceding program year. So, and this is a federal fiscal year 2020. So we're talking about October 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2020. So this annual list of obligated projects shows everything that had a firm federal funding obligation in the region during that fiscal year 2020. This can be, kind of a little bit of dry content to some extent, although there are some people that are very interested in this. We continue to try to make efforts to make this report easier to read and understand. So we've included some additional information. We have an introductory narrative that defines each column heading in the report. We have a categorization of each project, whether it's a highway and bridge project or a transit project, a bike ped project, a planning project, a research project. And we also describe whether each project was individually or programmatically listed in our tip. We talked about those statewide programs. Sometimes when funding obligations happen, they happen for projects within those statewide programs. So it can be hard to compare the tip document because with the annual list of obligated projects for that reason. So we try to make it easier for people to understand and digest that. So overall this year, we had 77 projects in benefiting or affecting the region that had federal funding obligations. We had 14 local projects in 8 different communities. We had 21 regional projects and 42 statewide projects. Total federal funding obligations in the region totaled $116.48 million in fiscal year 2020. That is an increase of more than $68 million from last year. Last year, we had just over $48 million in federal funding obligations. Why such a big difference between this year and last year? $31 million was obligated just to the Exit 4A project, so a significant obligation of federal funding for Exit 4A. We had an obligation of FTA funding at the state level of $5 million to support the project development phase of the Capital Corridor Rail project. We had an obligation of $10 million for 5 high investment bridges on I-93 southbound in the city of Manchester and the town of Hooksett. We had some CARES Act funding. This is the coronavirus, the first coronavirus relief package called the CARES Act. That did bring a substantial amount of funding both into the region and into the state to help our public transit operators within the region and statewide. So we had obligations of nearly $12 million in CARES Act federal funding, as well as continued obligations for debt service from the I-93 corridor project. So as the I-93 corridor project completes and moves towards and is now complete construction, the obligations now become debt service obligations. So those are really the key drivers of why that number of 116 million for 2020 is so different than last year. So of the categories that we break down in the annual list of obligated projects, the total highway and bridge project obligations were just over $87 million in the region. That's 74.8% of the overall obligations in the region. Of that, I-93 expansion related projects totaled just over $17 million in 2020. That includes the debt service and the final construction funding for the 4th lane. Total transit project obligations, $22.6 million. 19.4% of obligations. That percentage is substantially higher than we see in kind of a typical year. And again, why is that higher than normal? It's because of that CARES Act funding that came in to support transit operations around the country, but specific to us within our region and the state as a whole. So that transit number is higher than you would normally see because of those CARES Act funds. Total bicycle and pedestrian project obligations, just over $2 million, 1.8% of obligations. This admittedly is a little bit of a misleading figure because it only considers the standalone bicycle and pedestrian projects, the TAC projects and any other standalone bicycle and pedestrian projects. However, a lot of projects that may be done on highways and bridges include bicycle and pedestrian elements. So sometimes when a bridge is replaced, they replace that bridge with a sidewalk that didn't exist before. This figure of $2 million doesn't include those portions of those projects. Those projects are in the highway and bridge category. So in reality, more than $2 million was spent if you consider those types of considerations for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. But in terms of the standalone projects, just over $2 million in the region. Planning projects obligations, $4.2 million, 3.6% of obligations, and research and innovation projects, 414,000, just under 0.5% of obligations. So that's it in a nutshell. The report is up on our website. If anybody is interested in reviewing the details of the report and has any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer those. I think we also sent the report around in your meeting packets for this meeting, and I'm sure everybody read it cover to cover. Maybe, read it with your kids around the fire, cold winter night. It makes for great reading. So if anybody has any questions on it, let me know. Otherwise, I will yield the floor back to Colleen.
Nate, I think we need one more category, and it's probably separate from that last slide. We need a category that is specific to what are we having to do for debt management. We're now paying for things that happened in the past that we had to put into we had to go out and borrow money to do, and now we're having to pay for it. What are we going to do when the debt management number gets to be 100%?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Dick. I think that's something we can certainly do in the, you can discern that figure from the descriptions in the project list, but that's not very user-friendly. I think it makes sense to include a debt category, a debt service category in future. Pretty much the only debt service that we have directly in our region is the Salem to Manchester debt service. The state will be issuing 2 new Garvey bond issuances are proposed in the 10-year plan. However, I think both of those issuances will ultimately fund projects that are outside of our region. But I think it makes sense to have a debt category and not to lump debt into the highway and bridge component. So I think that's something we can take you up on, Dick, with our next report on this.
Well, the debt is probably over and above. In your last slide, everything should have added up to 100%. So somehow we need to have another slide that says, by the way, some of that is debt category that we're having to pay off because we didn't have any money back 10 years ago.
Yeah, the last slide does add up to 100%. The debt right now is all lumped into the highway and bridge category, but we can break it out separately and identify that for next year's report. All of our debt service in this annual list of obligated projects is all related to the I-93 project. We don't have any debt service that's not related to that project.
Well, I thought I saw somewhere around $30 million, $40 million. That's a significant piece of change.
Yep, in the tip. So the way the debt service is structured, certain debt service amounts for certain breakout projects go up over the next few years, and certain ones go down as the debt service is paid down. We do have a copy and I believe the DOT might even post it on their website, of the I-93 financial plan that breaks down project by project all of the different debt service issuances, the ones that are federally backed and the ones that are state backed. We use that for the fiscal constraint component of our TIP and metropolitan plan. But yes, the short answer is yes, Dick, we can break it out, I think a little bit more user-friendly to identify specifically debt service.
Thanks, Nate.
Mark, do you have a question?
Yeah, Nate, this may be a better question for Bill next week for the MPO, but you listed $31 million obligated for Exit 4A. Does that remain obligated, or does it somehow get kicked back because they didn't go forward in fiscal 2020 and how they're regrouping?
Yes, so I need to be a little bit careful here because I don't want to misspeak. I know the answer to your question. So basically, Bill Oldenburg will be in a better position to provide details on this. When the department went through the design build proposal process, they made a significant obligation at that point to support the design build proposal process. Ultimately, when they reevaluated the project following the design build proposal process, that's part of the reason why the project has been restructured into an A project and the 16035 project, was to accommodate that previous federal debt obligation. So or that, not debt obligation, that federal obligation of 31 million. So mostly what you'll see now is that previous obligated funding will be used for PE and right-of-way services and a little bit of construction in the design bid build delivery framework, but most of the construction and most of the future obligations will happen under the 13065A project and any other child projects that may come out of it. Bill Oldenburg can speak much more eloquently about this than I can, so I will defer to him for the full explanation next Tuesday. But the reason that federal obligation of 31 million existed was to support the design build process, and they have restructured the project and children projects now based on that obligation and the fact that most of that obligation will not actually be used for construction phase funding. Only a small portion of it will be. That's why the majority of construction funding is now in the A project.
Okay.
I know that's a long and convoluted thing and we're kind of in the weeds, but Bill Oldenburg can speak to it more eloquently than I can, I think. So I will defer to him on Tuesday for the master explanation.
Understood.
Are there any other questions for Nate? Okay, seeing none, I guess it looks like we have just one more item on the agenda, information item on the TAP solicitation.
Yeah, and this is really just to make sure everybody is aware. We sent, I think, the key kind of information out about that solicitation. You may have seen it from us a couple of times now through a couple of different channels. But the DOT has announced a TAP solicitation, and Lucy could probably speak in more detail about it than I can. This is our transportation alternatives program. It funds bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure projects. The DOT has a website set up, which I think we sent everybody a link to, that provides kind of all the information we know at this point about this TAP solicitation. The first step is for interested communities to submit a letter of intent by, I believe it's February 5th. Is that correct, Lucy?
Yes, that is. And the details are on the website. So I would
Yeah.
refer everybody to that website as well. Or if you have specific questions, let me know and we can get back with you.
Yeah, so letters of intent are due February 5th. If you don't submit a letter of intent, you can't apply for the program when the full application package is released. So now would be the time, if you are interested in pursuing a TAP application or your community is interested in pursuing it, now would be the time to really be thinking about what the scope and cost of that project might be. And we are available to provide technical assistance to help put a letter of intent together, or when the application time comes, to help collect any data, supply any information that could help support any municipal application in the region for TAP funding. So we're here to help, but we just want to make sure it's on the radar screen and that everybody's aware that if you don't submit a letter of intent by February 5th, and the letter of intent's a pretty straightforward thing. I think there's a template on the DOT website. Basically, you're just saying you're expressing interest in applying for a project X for X amount of funding, just giving DOT a heads up about what you're thinking about. But if you don't submit that letter of intent, you can't apply for the funding when the full application is released. Lucy, is there anything that you would add to that? I know that was kind of my off-the-cuff overview of where we're at on the TAP program, but from the department's perspective, is there anything that I didn't mention that I should?
No, I think you did a good job mentioning that. And as I said, that the additional information or what we have at this point is on the website. So, and refer questions to us or to Nate. So I think you did a nice job of explaining that.
All right, if there are no other questions, I don't know if anyone has any other business or announcements or anything else they need to share at this point. If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Linda Coonhart, Francis Town.
All right, Linda, and a second to that motion. Todd, we'll give that to you. I see your hand raised. So I don't know if we've been doing a roll call for adjournment. Nate, do you need a roll call for us to adjourn, or can we just all agree?
I think it's historically been just thumbs up.
Okay. All right. So all those in favor of adjournment, thank you very much. We will see. And reminder then the MPO meeting on Tuesday, I guess if folks have some interest in that 4A project, otherwise we'll see you next month.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.